fear of death is fundamentally inhibiting mankind's ability to pursue happiness. And with that, I'd like to open today's quarterfinals on the motion, this House proposed a world in which there is no fear of death. But before I get to my substantive arguments, why the fear of death is prohibiting us from pursuing happiness, I'd first like to give you a few points of framing. Firstly, we assume that under this motion it is actually possible to take the fear of death from all people. It has to be given for this to actually be a debate that we can have. And then the first point of framing, what is the fear of death? We as side proposition believe that the fear of death does not only apply to being scared of physically dying, but to being scared of not being present in society anymore. Being said, this means that if you are physically dead, you are not. This does not mean that your fear of death has been completed only when your legacy has died out from society. Your fear of death has actually been achieved, has actually been fulfilled. Secondly, to analyze what the actual problem in the status quo is. In the status quo, most people are not actually happy. Because what they perceive as happiness is just the feeling that they have fulfilled that they have created a sort of legacy that will live on, thereby making them, in essence, invincible to being invincible to death, fundamentally, or at least for a certain amount of time. Therefore, them not feeling having the ability to actually die. Secondly, the fear of death has a gigantic impact on humans' behavior because their entire life is structured in a way in which they pursue a legacy. And thirdly and lastly, who are we actually talking about in this debate? We see two groups that would be fundamentally affected by them losing the fear of death. Firstly, healthy people, i.e. people that can function in society normally and are not inhibited in the ability to live a full 80 or 90 years of life and due to health issues. And secondly, the sick people that they cannot actually achieve those 80 to 90 years of life due to an actual physical impairment. So let me now get to my substantive arguments. Firstly, the principle of the value of life. As I've already alluded to in my intro, people are currently not actually seeking happiness. What people are pursuing in life is not to find fulfillment in what they actually want to do and what is what they should be destined to do based on their personality and based on what they actually want to achieve in life. Their entire life is based on building a legacy and trying to live on after their physical passing. People are not actually trying to be happy. They're just trying to stay alive as long as possible. They're trying to create a legacy, and they're trying to live forever. Yes, please.
Do you believe that life has intrinsic value? And if so, why is the absence of life not regrettable?
Yes, the life is in itself valuable, but the life that we are currently living, due to the fear of death, is not actually what we should pursue in life. Yes, dying is in general a bad thing, but that we're not arguing that. We are arguing whether the fear of death in itself is actually inhibiting our ability to live a fulfilled life, which, as I'm going to continue to show you, is actually the case. Because due to the fear of life, people are not actually living their life to their fullest potentials. For example, if I, as a person, my goal in life is to become a great musician. I want to be the best violinist in the world. But I know that would mean I would have to take risk in trying to become the best violinist in the world, because I might not actually have the skill to do so. But if I give up my steady job that might create a legacy, as in for example, the bank sector or the investment sector, if I were to give up my job that has a high likelihood of me building some sort of legacy, I would actually, but because I'm not willing to do that, because I'm scared of leaving no legacy whatsoever, I'm not actually pursuing what the happiness I'm destined to have if I was not inhibited by the fear of death. Sorry. Sorry. And in fact, this being said, if we were to actually pursue the absence of the fear of death, society in general would grow and would it be in general happier, because in a society in which everybody is pursuing their own personal happiness, everybody is also furthering society's goals of having a healthy society, because the fear of death in itself creates mental health issues. Because if we are constantly living with the fear of death, we're always not living to a full potential, because the pressure of finding a legacy is so incredibly high. Yes, please.
Which is worse, living a crippling 9-to-5 job, or finally fulfilling your dream because you know that your life is limited? Talking to your son, talking to your friends to actually build a legacy, as you would say. Which is worse? Working a crippling 9-to-5 job on your side because people don't fear death and don't want to do something before it's over, or finally talking to those around you because you know that your time is limited?
Thank you. Well, we, as on-site proposition, do not see how people would actually pursue 9-to-5 jobs, because 9-to-5 jobs in most cases are not are not what is there to put what was your actual goal in life. Because, as I've said, in our world, people would pursue their highest goals and pursue their highest happiness that they can achieve, and we will not see how working a crippling 9-to-5 job, as the honourable speaker put it, would in some way contribute to your pursuit of happiness. Because we on-site proposition would believe that yes, some people might see working in an office setting as their ultimate pursuit, but these people would actually work incredibly hard, and therefore further society in general. Because yes, we as society will still need people that work in office settings, but these people that actually do those jobs would be the perfect fit for those jobs, because the only jobs that they will take in our world are the jobs that they love. And when you love a job, you work your hardest, and you are putting in far more work than if you're pushed into that crippling 9-to-5 job, as once again the opposition speaker put it. So let me now reiterate what we on site proposition are trying to pursue through implementing the no fear of death policy, so to say. In our world, people would live to their fullest. People would achieve ultimate happiness, and people would move on from living in an unhappy society, and society in general would be finally healthy. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for that speech. Now I'd like to invite the first opposition speaker to open their case.
We criminalize murder. We regret the death tolls of natural disasters. We mourn the loss of our friends and our family. We do all of this because we believe that life has meaning, and that the loss of life equally has meaning as well. Because the fear of death allows us to treasure the life that we have, we are proud to oppose. Our stance is that we prefer a world with a fear of death. This means that individuals are highly aware of their deaths and the impact on others like friends and family members, and hence fear the outcome of death. This means that we make better decisions about our lives, what to do with our relationships, how we take risks, what kind of person that we want to be based off this fear. Note that this is about preferring a world to live in where everyone already naturally fears death as in status quo. It is not about forcing or convincing people to fear death, hence this debate is about how the fear itself affects our actions. Conversely, Proposition is to defend a world without the fear of death, and its related outcomes like suffering of friends and family members. They also cannot stand for individuals being highly aware of death. This is because the outcome and impacts of death are all intrinsically tied to what gives it the fear behind it. Two responses to their arguments. First, on creating a legacy, and second, on becoming an obsession. So first, on creating a legacy. They tell us that people will be miserable because they'll be fixated on creating a legacy and living on after physical passing. First, I would just like to dispute this assumption that creating a legacy is an a priori sad thing to do. Because it looks like spending more time with your kids. It looks like creating memories with your family members. Having your family members and friends remember you as a valuable person. It is not mutually exclusive between leaving a legacy and being happy, no thank you. We think that there's inherent happiness in the process of creating that legacy. But second, this is a mischaracterization coming up from proposition. Because creating a legacy is not just what you do when you fear death. It is also about living the day-to-day things because you fear not being able to do the things that are meaningful to you at the point in which you are dead. So the reason why people are unhappy in status quo right now, as they point out, is not because they're fixated on creating a legacy. It's because they choose not to fulfill their bucket list when they go to their 9-to-5 job because they think, I can just do that thing that I've been yearning to do another time anyway, because death is not at the forefront of my calculus. No thank you. Second response to their argument on creating an obsession of death. Recognize that this is not true. Because human beings have evolved psychologically to be capable of adequately weighing the fear of death alongside many other experiences and emotions. Hence, it's really extreme to claim that it will become an obsession or that it will paralyze individuals. We bring to you a parallel of poverty, for example. How people who are poor don't choose not to eat every single meal just to save every single cent. But when they're making major life decisions, like wanting to take out a loan, for example, or whether they want to buy that house or invest in that particular car, that is when the fear of not having enough money, for example, will factor in. Similarly, the fear of death is when people are making major life decisions, like whether they want to quit that 9-to-5 job to pursue the things that they think are valuable before they die. It is on their side that people are forced to stay in their 9-to-5 jobs even more. They cannot claim that they solve it better. But I'd just like to state, no thank you, that it's just demeaning for proposition to claim that mental illness will go away at the point at which you just completely forget about death altogether. It is not such a simple construct that the fear of death is the sole responsible cause for it. My first argument is on how the fear of death is legitimate and rational. My second argument is on how the fear of death leads to better lives. And my second speaker will argue about creating more moral individuals. So first argument, on how the fear of death is a completely legitimate fear to have. The thesis of this argument is that people should fear death because life has intrinsic value. Why is this claim true? First, because life is the basis of all human experiences and the possibility of happiness. Things only have value because the human nature and consciousness wills it to be. Enjoying a cone of ice cream is only possible because people are alive to eat it. A holiday trip to Zagreb is only valuable as a source of happiness because we are all here to experience this charming city. But without life, none of our actions or experiences can generate value. And of course, I'm not saying, no thank you, that eating that one ice cream can somehow have a significant impact on the value throughout the cosmos. But from my perspective, it's a meaningful part of my life, one that people will enjoy and look forward to. Therefore, the fear of death is legitimate because people fear not being able to engage in more activities that they find happiness in. But second, our lives are meaningful not just to ourselves, but to the people around us, to our friends and family, to our loved ones and our partners. When I die, I'm pretty sure Baraf here will mourn my death. He'll be miserable because I won't be there to crack inside jokes with him or to game with him in our free time. I know my family members will be devastated for the rest of their lives. And I fear that because I don't want to see the people that I cherish in that situation of anguish and of mourning, of instinctively turning to point out something funny, but only to remember that I'm no longer there. But before I move on, yes?
Can you tell us, so the sentiment of actually missing people that have died is exclusive to your side, as it's not exclusive for fearing death?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, madam. I think that people only choose to then act on having more memories with people when they know that one day they will be gone. Because if they think that death is not a possibility, that they don't fear it, then there's no incentive to actively build relationships or actually accredit any value to the relationships that I hold with other people. Recognize that death is a bad thing that we ought to regret and to fear. To snap out death on their side is to devalue the life that we all live. Second argument on how the fear of death is preferable because that is what drives us to improve humanity. The thesis of this argument is that the fear of death uniquely pushes people to innovate and better their lives. The problem on their side is that without the fear of death, people have no impetus to improve. Why is this true? We are not saying that if you don't fear death, you don't know death. We are saying that knowing death is not enough. Because we are bombarded with information on a daily basis that pushes the knowledge of death to the back of our minds. An afterthought that you only have as you stare at your ceiling at night trying to sleep. Not when you're going about your daily activities to preoccupy you. The counterfactual is that the fear of death pushes that notion to the forefront of your decision-making calculus. It pushes people to prioritize actions based on what they find meaningful, because they want to generate as much meaning with their lives before they leave. Because A, you want to make sure that you really clear some of the things on your bucket list that you find valuable, for example. You go on that family trip that you've been putting off for years, every time telling yourself the excuse, maybe next time because I'm not going to die anytime soon. B, you push to extend your life as much as possible because you want to experience more happiness, you want to experience more time with the people and experiences that you cherish. What happens on our side as a result of this? A, for individuals, it means being happier as a whole because it means living healthier lives when you choose not to overwork, for example, but go to more meaningful choices like going out for family members, trying out that new hobby or that new activity like woodwork, for example. Buying life insurance to ensure that your family has a social safety net after you are gone. Deciding to finally raise your child with more care such that you leave a legacy and you ensure that people who remember you are those that you have forged the most significant and cherishable memories with. But on a societal level, it means people are more likely to make a lasting change to the world. People are pushed to solve climate change faster, to develop cancer-curing drugs faster, to avoid wars and conflicts much more, to uplift poverty, and to save hunger, because people fear death, and they know about the fear of death in other individuals as well. What this means is that in the long run, pushing for immortality is also a final goal that we want. We have proven, my first argument, that living life has value and is a basis of happiness. Death constitutes a fundamental attack on that happiness. We must fear it and try to fight it. Our side believes that the fear of death allows us to treasure the life that we have, proud to oppose.
Thank you for that speech. Now I'd like to invite the second proposition speaker.
At the point when the fear of death is constantly overshadowing your life, influencing your decisions badly, and actually keeps people egoistic and scared, we are so proud to propose today, and that is why we prefer a world where there is no fear of death. Before getting to rebuttal and reconstruction, let us actually clarify our stance in this debate again. So, what we are proposing is not people not knowing about death at all. We believe that on our side, people would still be conscious of that death is actually something that exists. But we believe the difference is that the fear of death is actually not constantly overshadowing their life, which means that they actually are not able to pursue their happiness properly. So the difference you get from both sides is that on proposition we have still rational decisions because we don't believe that people are simply like gonna jump off a cliff because they're not scared of death anymore, because we believe that they're still conscious of death being a possibility, but the difference is that the impact of negativity of the fear of death overshadowing your life are not existing on our side of the house. So, on to rebuttal. They told us about the legitimacy of life having a value if, and things being only valuable if if you're scared to lose it. Firstly, let me say that even only if you tell us something is legitimate doesn't mean you should prefer it. But engaging on their stance and saying, okay, if it is legitimate, we believe that the moment that we are able to point out as many harms, as for the pursuit of happiness and as for society for people only pursuing their own good, we believe that we are able to actually diminish this point of legitimacy because we point out the harms. So the second thing they told us is about it being beneficial for improving the society. So the idea they give us is that basically actually the idea of being scared of death actually at the forefront of your thinking, which means that you want to, as an idea of creating a legacy is so beneficial because you want to actually create benefits, and that is why people are actually wanting to actually benefit society. So we believe that firstly there are more benefits than harms of this, because the overshadowing doesn't only, as on the left side, maybe incentivize some people, but we believe that the harm that people get from that is the constant fear of being the constant fear of dying actually outweighs the benefits we get here. But saying, okay, maybe seeing people will actually have an incentive to care about society as they want to create a legacy on their side of the house. We believe that we have the same thing on our side, but the difference is that the difference between the both sides is the incentive. So on our side, we have the incentive of people actually being more altruistic, as I will explain in my argument. On their side, we have still the selfish incentive of people actually wanting to create this as a legacy. So onto reconstruction about the value of life and creating a legacy and how we believe this is actually bad. So they told us that it is actually not something bad if you want to create a legacy. Okay, even if we take them at their best here and say, okay, yes, maybe it's not bad to create something that is good in the long term, we believe still, again here, it is the incentive that matters because it has so many bad impacts on you, as we're clarifying as that proposition. And secondly, we believe that people still would, on our side, create these benefits, but the difference again is not for the purpose of legacy and the selfish impact, but we believe what matters on our side is that people are more focusing on the common good. So let me clarify again, what is the difference between the sides in this debate? So the difference we see here is that even if we take both sides and take the benefits, people are going to care about society, the difference that we have in proposition is the incentive of people being more effective. Why is that? We believe that on proposition, if people are not scared of death anymore, they mean, as we've analyzed in our first argument, that they value the life as a difference, which means that they automatically value all people's lives the same, which actually leads to more effectiveness of this incentive, which means that if we have a more effective incentive of people actually caring for other people, that is actually going to have an effect on their actions, which means they are more beneficial to the common good. And secondly, as we've told you, they are less focused on their individual good, which also benefits everyone. So let me first give you some extension of the first proposition argument on the principle of regular life, and actually how bodily autonomy and how this person how this influences your decisions. So I'm actually going to give a new stakeholder here, and actually sick people. So we're talking about expected deaths here. So what realistically happens is that if we have no fear of death, we believe that people are going to use the rest of their life in a better way. Why is that? Because firstly, in the status quo, we believe that life is overshadowed by this fear and basically completely taken away by this fear. So this means that people are not able to pursue happiness on the death of the house if they expect death. So what happens outside of the house is that as they're actually not scared of the death, they are able to value it more for the time they have less. Yes, please.
If I don't fear death, I don't think that other people fear death as well. So what incentive do people on your side have to save other people's lives, ending conflicts and wars or solving climate change?
Okay, yes, please. We believe the fundamental difference on our side of the house is that people actually value the life of everyone the same, which means that they don't put their own good of individual over the life of others, which means that they're actually more likely to make sacrifices as they don't value the life over the good of other lives. So I think that answers your point. So what I was actually talking about is that on our side, as you value the time left, that you have value the time more that you have there, you're more able to use the time beneficial, using it for the pursuit of your happiness. So why is it important that we care about these people? Because on proposition we give them the benefit of happiness in the short term they have left, because there is no long term existence for these people. Let's be realistic. So getting to my substantive, my other substantive argument about altruism. So we believe on both sides there are people are striving for fulfillment and happiness. So, and also in the status quo on their side of the house, we already have some altruistic people, but the premise here is that we have more altruistic people and more people having a better intent on our side of the house. So, what we're saying here is that the difference of the side is that in the status quo, the fear of dying makes you want to not to completely be dead, like the legacy thing that we pointed out. And on our side, we have people who are not afraid of that anymore. And also, as we pointed out, people value the lives of other people the same. So, what is actually the incentive of altruistic people in the status quo is that people want to create a legacy and therefore help other people. What happens on our side is that they're not prioritizing their life over anyone else, which means that they have have a more pure incentive to pursue altruism. So, as a result, we have more willing people to make sacrifices towards the greater good. What does this mean? What does this new incentive change? So firstly, we believe you have more altruistic people because no one will be afraid of death, which means that most people will actually be able to value the life the same as other people's lives. And secondly, we have more truly altruistic people, which means that they have a pure incentive because they're less reliant on personal goals as pursuing the legacy and therefore being altruistic. So the impact here is that if you have more altruistic people and more compatible individualism, is that more people strive towards the common good and towards the good of other people. So what happens here is that, secondly, if the value of life is the same, people are not prioritizing anyone's life anymore. But why do we actually believe it is so beneficial in this debate to have altruistic people? Firstly, because we have a better functioning society. So this is for two reasons. Firstly, as there's more acknowledgement of others' problems, which means that you're not only focused on your own problems, you may even acknowledge other problems. And secondly, we have the willingness to contribute to the solution of these other problems, as you're actually, if you're happy yourself, and if you don't only focus on yourself, and as we've explained to you, if you're able to make sacrifices, that actually enables you to be contributing to the solution. So the important trade-off we actually have to make in this debate is that, we say that we benefit the individual and happiness, and we also benefit the society. But even if we say that even if we say that we are not actually creating more altruistic people, we believe the benefits we given you in the first proposition about people being more happy and being able to pursue the more happiness automatically leads to improving the greater good. Because if you're happy, you're more likely to care about other people's problems, and therefore we have a better society. Please propose.
Thank you for that speech. Now I'd like to invite the second opposition.
I want to discuss three things in this speech. First, what makes life valuable? Second, what makes life meaningful? And lastly, what makes life better? I'm going to spend the least amount of time on the third contention because they completely dropped Matthew's argumentation about why the drive or the fear of death incentivizes individuals to make our societies better, incentivizes individuals to do things like create medicine to prevent individuals from dying in the first place. But first, what makes life valuable? And I don't want to give a lot of response to what Matthew tells you. Matthew explains to you why life, in and of itself, is a good thing. That the existence of the human mind is why anything that we will to be good is considered good in the first place. That consciousness is where all of our rights stem from. If that is the case, it stands to reason that the assault on the very fundamental fabric of our lives should be deemed as something that is worthy of fear. Because the very fear of death is what makes life important. Because when you realize that the loss of that life is something that's imminent, that's when you want to do whatever you can humanely to protect it. This is something that they did not respond to. But what will you hear from proposition? They explain that life is only good because you want to help other people do things. I have a couple of responses to this. The first thing is, this mechanism only works if you're literally saving, or if you're literally sacrificing yourself for this other individual. What does this mean? The fear of death will only inhibit me from helping another person if that means that I'm going to have to sacrifice myself. Given the fact that we point out to you that this life is not a loss of life is already a bad thing, I'm not sure why this is an inherently good thing. The second problem I have with this argument, however, is that I'm not sure why exactly you always need to fear death all the time in order to help someone else. Presumably you're still able to do things that are important to other people. The last thing I'd like to point out here is empathy. If you personally don't fear death, then the death of another individual isn't that bad to you. If I don't prioritize the loss of life, what's it incentivizing me to prevent someone else from losing their life, because presumably he himself doesn't fear losing his life either. So what's the incentive to, for example, become a soldier in a conflict in order to prevent other people? Because there's nothing inherently wrong with these individuals dying. They don't give us any substantive reasons for this. So what's at the end of this debate is very important. The flip of everything that they said is that the fear of death makes life meaningful. Given we've proven to you that life is important, the fear of death incentivizing individuals to preserve life is a good in and of itself. They don't respond to any of this. Second question then, what makes life meaningful? I want to first point out that they have a very strange characterization of the fear of death. They say that it's all-encompassing. No, it isn't. In fact, all of us are here. I'm not sure all of you are currently paralyzed by the fear of death. I think we're doing just fine. I'm not scared of death while I'm eating my lunch or sitting on the toilet. I think I'm perfectly fine and able to do most things functionally. The fear of death becomes relevant, however, when I'm making important life decisions. The fact that I'm finally going to quit that dead-end job that I always hated. And obviously you say, but you know you're going to die. But humans are strange creatures. Knowing something is not the same thing as immensely feeling it and viscerally understanding it. Like I know that there are people out there that are suffering, but I still care more about my friends because they're closer to me as who I am. This is the reason as to why people don't fear buy life insurance, because the fact that they're going to die may not always be imminent on them in the status quo. This is something that already happens with the fear of death. It's going to be made even worse on their side of the house. But the next thing I want to point out here is, just because you fear death doesn't necessarily mean that you cannot take actions to assuage your fear of death. So, for example, many people die happy. The reason is because they feel that they have satisfactorily built up a legacy such that their lives are inherently meaningful. When people go to sleep and die in their sleep, or people die surrounded by friends and family and their grandchildren, that is something when people don't fear death, they're happy because they have conquered that fear of death. The last thing they say here is, leaving a legacy. But leaving a legacy doesn't always mean that I'm going to work to save the world. Leaving a legacy just means being nice to my friends, having people remember me, having people remember what I was and the impact that I have to the world. They never really explained to us why leaving a legacy must always be this grand thing that they talked about, because these things can be individually important to me as a human being. They don't really give us a reason as to why that's the case. No, thank you, madam. So at the heart of this argument, let's be very clear. The fear of death pushes us to do the things that we would never have done, to strike off things off our bucket list that we will otherwise never have done. This forces individuals to finally live the lives that they're living today. And this means that they're more likely to be happy, more likely to feel satisfaction, rather than just being stuck in the here and now. Last question, what makes life better? The first claim that I want to make here is that the fear of death incentivizes individuals to stop things. So what am I talking about here? A good example is curing things like cancer, which cause massive pain. The other thing I'm talking about here is preventing things like wars. But also, I want to point out that people are just sad when people die because their friends are no longer around them. And as Matthew points out, curing death is actually something that's immensely possible, because death by natural causes is really a misnomer. There's no such thing as a natural death. Humans aren't biologically designed to die at a certain point in time. Every single death is really just a technical fault with your body. And as I've explained to you, the death of a human being causes immense sadness. It causes people to not be able to see a grand future where they're much better. What does this mean? This means that individuals will never be able to cure death and the fundamental assault that it has on human dignity. They won't make lives better, which means that even if you want to take them on their best case, the present fear of death doesn't make life, the lack of the fear of death doesn't allow us to develop the world around us that we have today. There are no scientists who want to build a legacy, for example, to build water filtration systems, etc., because that doesn't make life better. Moving on to the third and final argument on our side, on incentivizing moral actions. I'm going to clash directly with what they said. I'm going to explain to you why the fear of death allows the constructions of systems of moral belief that moderates our actions and morality. The premise of this argument is that human beings are inherently selfish creatures, primarily concerned with oneself because your emotions are the ones that you feel the most viscerally. The problem is that this creates a collective action problem, where people treat one another horribly because they need to make themselves better. So before societies were formed, before moral obligations were formed, people were incredibly scared. And the reason why is because no one wants to be bludgeoned for a loaf of bread. We want to be able to live in a society where we are structured and ordered. The problem with this is that this lack of a fear of death disenables us from doing things like creating religion. That means that we're personally incentivized to be good to our fellow man. What does this mean? The fear of death makes us personally invested in being a good human being. And being a good human being. The fear of death means that we're able, for example, to say, look, if you're a good person now, God or a religion in the afterlife will reward you in the future. And obviously, a proposition is going to say, but you can just be empathetic, right? Like atheists all the time are moral. And we completely accept that. But the reason as to why we're able to build a civilization to the point where that's possible is because preceding civilizations before us have been able to build systems of morality based on religion, such that these morals claims are intuitive to all of us now. The fact that we're able to live in a prosperous society where we're able, for example, to philosophize and explain why some things are good independent of religion is because of the construction of ordered societies while they were primitive. Moreover, I think it's just very hard to explain moral philosophy to individuals. Like, it's very hard to explain uniquely why I should care about someone when I don't feel viscerally what they do. The fear of death empowers religions because it tells them that when they're going to die, at the very least there'll be a reward and they shouldn't be scared of that. There'll be a reward for that, and that means that the fear of death encourages individuals to be good human beings. We believe that the fear of death allows us to treasure the lives we have. We oppose.
Thank you for your speech. Now I'd like to invite the proposition.
At the point at which Team Singapore has told us that the value of life is that they can come to Zagreb and experience this wonderful city, they've fundamentally not understood our case of that having to be the only reason in order to really pursue this happiness of experiencing Zagreb. I will talk about three main clashes in my debate. Firstly, about how is death perceived on both sides. Secondly, how the value of life is on both sides, and thirdly and lastly about the effects on society that we see on our side of the house and why they are better on our side of the house. Now, we have told you that we believe that there's still a consciousness for death on our side of the house because simply life is a time frame Life is a time frame, and death will still be the end of the life, which, because of the value of life that we have on both sides, is still perceived as something bad. But we simply say that we don't have to be afraid of the end of the life. Now, why is it that we must not be afraid of the end of life? Now, we believe that if you are afraid of the end of life, you are actually not taking the risks you would be taking if you were not afraid of life, simply because you think, I don't have that much time left in which I can actually pursue that happiness. Now, why are these risks so fundamentally necessary for actually pursuing your happiness? Now, in our daily lives, we are in a societal structure. And in the societal structure, we need a certain incentive to actually pursue that happiness. And we don't want the people to be incentivized because, I might be dying one day, but we want them to be incentivized for actually pursuing that happiness, which we believe is a fundamental value because it's fundamentally sustaining your life. Now, they have told us on their side of the house that we need that fear for actually missing family members, actually valuing the life. Now, I want to tell you two things. Firstly, on the point of actually missing people that I need to. Now, as soon as the people are dead on both sides of the house, we are basically going to miss them simply because they're not there. This is not exclusive to Singapore, and we've questioned this in the point, but I have no response to that. And secondly, also, on side opposition in this debate, they have the pressure to actually have happy memories with these people in order to pursue their happiness. While on our side of the house, we're telling you that they're solely doing this because they actually want to pursue happiness, not because they might die someday. And this is why they have to pursue their happiness in this short amount of time and actually are pressured into being happy. We believe that that outside Singapore, we're not actually able to pursue real happiness because side opposition is pressuring us into feeling that happiness, and this is for us no real happiness because we're not actually doing things we would do if we were not pressured into doing. Now I want to do a comparative here. Why is the pursuit of happiness better on our side? Now we say that we want people to simply be happy, not because they're pressured to actually do this in a certain amount of time, not because they're pressured to have a legacy, not because they're pressured that their family members will miss them, not because they're pressured that somebody loves them in order to miss them, but because people simply want to be happy. And when we say that even if the people are not able to be happy that fast, because they're not pressured into doing this, we believe that this is better happiness because they're actually having that incentive to be happy, not the incentive to have the best life before they die. But before I move on, yes please.
You say your alternative is a consciousness of life ending and also the fact that you find life valuable and you're concerned about that. How does that not sound strangely similar to the fear of death?
Now, the fear of death is simply that when you are thinking of the end of life, you're afraid of it. Now, on our side, we say that, okay, and the end of life is something bad, but we mustn't be afraid of it, which actually also is the whole point of religions. We don't want people to be afraid, because then the thing happens that I've just analyzed that you're not actually pursuing your dreams. Although this might sound similar, there's a crucial difference that you're not feeling fear when you're thinking of death. Now, why is this feeling of death so crucial in this debate? Now we say that this brings me directly to my second clash about the value of life. Now we say that life is not actually an absolute value as stated by my first speaker already. We said that the value of life is based on the pursuit of happiness. That the value of life is actually that people can pursue their happiness.
Enough information.
Now, our Team Singapore has told us that the life's value is solely dependent on that legacy, on what we are actually doing in that life, and whether or not we are pursuing this happiness. And they have actually not given. And we have stated again and again in this debate that we do not want people to create a legacy for them, but we want people to actually be happy in the first place. And even if this involves creating a legacy, we think that this is crucially important, that this is legitimate. But we say that not the first incentive to be, okay, how can I live the best life before I'm actually dying, but how can I live the best life? And we believe that these two questions are fundamentally different. But before I move on, yes please.
If I am concerned about my life ending, as you seem to suggest, why would I be more self-sacrificial, as mentioned in the second speaker's argument?
This is what I'm going to talk in my third clash. But before I move on, I want to talk about how it was mentioned in a poem that actually people will not give up what they're actually doing at the moment, simply because they think, okay, I have an endless life left. But as we have stated again and again, people will still be conscious of the end of the life, and they will still see the value of life, because the value of life on our side is actually pursuing happiness. And we think that is so crucial that people are actually pursuing this happiness, and how this is also so crucially different on their side, from their side of the house. Now, they have told us on their side of the house the value is, okay, simply people have the possibility of pursuing that happiness, but because they are so afraid that this possibility might end one day, actually, they're not able to do this in long term. Now, why is that? Because they're not willing to take the risk it takes for being happy. They're not willing to go to Zagreb because they're afraid of their plane might crashing. This is exactly what is happening on their side of the house. They're afraid of dying, and this is why they can simply not do things it takes risk for. But now coming to my third clash, the effect of society. Now, we have told you that people are fundamentally, that people are actually altruistic. Now, the second speaker has told us that humans are inherently selfish, giving us no analysis on this point. But we say that this is wrong because we already have a society in the status quo that will keep you in that moral structure, meaning that you would actually feel the need to engage with people you love, feel the need to take care of the people around you. This means that because they are inherently incentivized to actually take care of the people around them, because they're not afraid of losing their own life, because they're not afraid of maybe not having the possibility of pursuing their happiness on side opposition, we say that they are they're more likely to not prioritize their life and their possibility of pursuing that happiness over the possibility of others to